Bonjour French 101 students, comment allez-vous? Welcome to video 7. Can you believe we're already in video 7 of chapitre préliminaire? And the topic we'll be talking about in today's video is l'heure. In other words, the hour or the time. So you're going to be learning how to tell time. So the first question we need to understand or know before we get into this topic a little further is, quelle heure est-il? So, what hour is it? Or what time is it? Notice that the T at the end of the verb est is pronounced because it's connected to il, which begins with a vowel right after it. Quelle heure est-il? Okay, so I'll give you a chance to go ahead and practice asking that question yourself. Quelle heure est-il? Okay, to answer that question, all we do is kind of change the word order a little bit. We change it from question word order using a question word like quel, which is what or which, and now we're going to change it to start with il est. So notice that est-il becomes il est, and then you're going to add in the number for the hour it is on the clock, and then heure, depending on the number of hours you're talking about. So, for example, if it is 3 o'clock, you would then say il est 3 heures. So it is 3 hours. That's what that sentence literally means, but we could translate it as it is 3 o'clock. Il est 3 heures. And notice that normally trois, the S is silent at the end. But when you're tacking it on to a word that begins with a vowel sound, even though heure begins with H is generally silent most of the time in French. Because it begins with a vowel sound, you're going to use the liaison, 3 heures. Okay, so if we look at some of the examples we see here, I'll move myself up now. Hey, we have various times on the clocks here. So if you want to say it's 1 o'clock, that would be il est 1 heure. Okay? And notice that we're using une and not un because heure is feminine. So il est 1 heure. Il est 2 heures. De, the X is normally silent on the end, but because it's before a word that begins with a vowel, we're going to use a liaison there. Il est 2 heures. Okay, so you could substitute any of the numbers that are on the clock. You could say il est 3 heures, 4 heures, 5 heures, 6 heures, 7 heures, 8 heures, 9 heures. Notice the pronunciation of the F at the end of neuf. 9 heures, it becomes like a V sound. Il est 10 heures, the X at the end of 10 becomes Z. Il est 10 heures. Il est 11 heures for 11. And then in just a moment, we'll learn about how to say 12 o'clock at noon and at midnight. But for now, I would like you to practice saying what time it is, whatever is the closest time on your clock to the hour. So if it happens to be 1:30 when you're looking at this video, or let's say it's 1:15, you could say il est 1 heure or il est 1 heure. You could say il est 3 heures, il est 6 heures, like whatever time is closest to the time you're looking at on your clock. Go ahead and say that now. Okay, a couple of other times you might need to know about. If you're talking about the middle of the day, that would be il est midi. So it's like the middle of the day. You see the sun up in the sky there. If it is midnight, then it is il est minuit. Nuit means night. Mi means like half, so it's kind of like in the middle of the night. So il est midi, il est minuit. All right, let's look at some other ways to tell time. All right, so if you want to get a little more detailed with your time telling, you might need to add some minutes to your time. And that could be 5 minutes, it could be 15 minutes, it might be 30 minutes, and there are various ways to do that. So for example, if it is 1:10, that would be il est 1h10. So it is 1 o'clock or it's 1 hour 10. We would say it the same way in English, right? It's 1:10. Okay, another time that you see here Il est 3h15. Okay, this one is kind of a specific expression. So instead of saying il est 3h15, you could say that. Il est 3h15, 3:15. But if you want to say basically 3 1/4, it's probably more common to say il est 3h15, 3:15. If you want to say that the time is 30 minutes or halfway past the hour, then you would say something like il est 9h30. Hey, anytime you're saying et demi for any of the clock times other than noon and midnight, you spell it with the E on the end. D-E-M-I-E or D-E-M-I-E if I spell it with French letters. But if you are saying 12:30 noon or 12:30 midnight, it is il est midi et demi or il est minuit et demi, but you do not put the E on the end. So it's just to remember with those two times. Okay, so at this time you could go ahead and create a sentence. You can speak the sentence, you can even write the sentence if you prefer, and you can create a time of your own. So for example, you could say il est 2h20. Okay, it's 2:20. Or you could say il est 5h27. It is 5:27. You can create anytime you want, and I'll allow you to say this one or to write it down in this next interaction coming up. Okay. All right, so another aspect of time that we need to look at is times that come after the half hour. So we've looked at times that come before the half hour, like 1h05, 1:05. We've looked at a quarter past the hour, like 3h15, 3:15. We've looked at times 30 minutes past the hour, like 5h30. Now we're going to look at times that come after the half hour. Okay, so for example, if I want to say it's 5:55, instead of saying il est 5h55, I guess it's possible to do it that way. But the easier way and the more common way you're going to hear it is to subtract from the next hour. So you would say il est 6h. Okay, it's not 6 o'clock yet, but we're going to start with that time. Il est 6h moins 5. And what do you think moins might mean? Okay, it's kind of like less. Okay, if you've ever studied Spanish, it might look a little bit or remind you a little bit of menos, which is like less in Spanish. In English, the closest word would be minus. So you can see some connections between those different words. So, il est 6h moins 5. It is 6 o'clock minus 5. And that's how we would say 5:55. Okay, so we see various examples here of how we can do this. Il est 2h moins 25. So it's like saying 2 o'clock minus 25 minutes, and that's 1:35. If you want to say 1:40, il est 2h, again, we're advancing to the next hour, moins 20. Oh, it's 2 o'clock minus 20 minutes. And finally, if you are talking about quarters of time, like 15-minute blocks, like we did when we talked about 3h15, you can do it with subtraction too. So, il est 2h moins le quart. Oh, it is 2 o'clock minus the quarter, in other words. Okay, so I'll ask you to create a time that is after 30 minutes past the hour. And again, this one, you can type the answer, you can say it too if you like. You can use either option. But you can go ahead and create a time of your own that is after the 30-minute mark. Okay, and another thing we need to keep in mind with telling time in French is that in French there is no such thing as saying AM and PM. Well, there is, it's just expressed in a different way. We use AM for morning, of course, and PM for afternoon and evening in English, but instead in French, instead of saying AM, they would say du matin. Du matin means basically of the morning, and that's after midnight until noon, which is the same thing we use AM for. So, il est 8h du matin. It is 8 o'clock in the morning. Okay, so du matin indicates AM in Spanish. Or not Spanish, I'm sorry, French. Et de l'après-midi, which would be noon until 6 p.m. Same thing for us in English. Okay, so you can say il est 1 heure de l'après-midi. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And that would correspond to the first part of PM. Same for us in English too. Du soir, so of the evening, 6 p.m. until midnight. Il est 9 heures du soir, so it's 9 o'clock in the evening. Okay, so you can jump in here and say what time it is for you. And if you like, you can just use a simple hour. You don't have to use minutes if you don't want to. But you can say something like il est 3 heures de l'après-midi or il est 9 heures du matin. Or you can tell me what time it is and include the time of the day. Okay, and finally, okay, you can see this kind of handy chart or clock face that shows you how time is expressed. So we can start with il est 1 heure, il est 2 heures, right here. Let's say il est 1 heure or 2 heures, etc. That would be two hands pointing at the 12. So you could say, for example, il est 2 heures 5, il est 2 heures 10 for 10 after, il est 2 heures et quart, il est 2 heures 20, il est 2 heures 25, il est 2 heures et demie. And if I'm using a time other than 12, a midday or 12 midnight, I spell that et demi with the E on the end. Okay, when I'm on the other side of the clock, however, now I'm using the subtraction word moins. So it would be il est 2 heures moins 25, so minus 25. Il est 2 heures moins 20. Il est 2 heures moins le quart, minus the quarter. Il est 2 heures moins 10. Et finalement, il est 2 heures moins 5. So I think this is a really great way to visualize how to tell time. You always know it's going to be il est something, whatever number it is. And then it really depends on what the minute hand is showing, either before 30 minutes or after 30 minutes. And of course you have the moins le quart or un quart to show that it's a quarter past the hour or a quarter before the hour. So I hope this explanation of telling time is easy to understand. I think it's similar to English in many ways with a few differences. But it's a very important skill to have any kind of conversations in French, to be able to make plans with people. If you were ever studying in a French-speaking country, you'd need to know what time your classes were. So I hope that it will be helpful to you. So, bonne soirée et à la prochaine!